Hey everyone, good evening and welcome to day, or I guess evening 39. So, I would love to start with the t-shirt, but today I grabbed a polo, so I have messed that entire system up. It happens. I realized that as I sat down and turned on the camera. So, skimming it, I'm just going to talk about today. Today started with the return to Boulevard after being away from it for several days. And honestly, the opening feeling was less pick up where I left off and more how much of the newer coordination does the system actually remember on its own now? And the answer turned out to be both more and less than I expected. Definitely uneven. So Boulevard was in the morning. Warm-ups immediately revealed that the newer vocal pathways, it was still there, but unstable in places. I do a hum to open exercise. The pitch really started wobbling once I started. Once I went from the hum to the vowel, it would be like, and there was just no... Okay, so I kind of tried to focus my energy without trying to fix notes. And I think it was the right thing to do. I did finally get the tone to level out. There was also still very much a strong buzz sitting in my voice. I was definitely down here. And as a result, the upper area around D4, A4 felt really tight and unstable, even at the beginning of the session, after the warm-ups. And being as though the chorus depends on F4s, that had me a little worried. So take 96 was the first one, and it wasn't so much a calibration pass as it was a reacclimation pass. It definitely was nowhere near a performance attempt. The tentativeness had come back at the beginning. I talked about the fact that sometimes I start and it feels like the engine hasn't warmed up yet. Today it felt like I hadn't really gotten into the car yet. To hell with how the engine was doing. The low section, section 2, once again had that feeling like I was walking a balance beam. It's feeling where the coordination feels like it's trying to stay centered without fully trusting itself at all. Toward the final third of the take, everything started sort of remembering where we had been and starting to move there. The chorus, there was some encouraging signs. The F4s, as I refer to them, they were there, and they were partially beginning to settle and partially sounding reached for. And by the time I got to section 4, it was beginning to feel like the place where the system was beginning to click back into alignment. Now, I've gone all through the piece, and it's just starting to feel like it's clicking or beginning to click. So that went less smoothly than I thought. One of the more interesting things throughout the whole take was that there was still this push-pull happening between the older vocal coordination and this newer vocal coordination. The newer vocal color kept trying to reappear organically without me searching for it or rebuilding it. So it's in there. It's just a question of continuing to let it come free. That much is encouraging. The second take was really getting to the point where the session stopped being reacclimation and started becoming operational again. Energy came up almost immediately across the board. I think I may have, I don't know if I want to call it cheating or had been cheating or no longer cheating, but in setting up Brighter yesterday, I realized that I can't run the karaoke track and the reference track at the same time, or it's going to give me an inflated volume. And I realized between takes that that is what I have been doing the entire time with Boulevard. I've been running both recordings to listen to try to find where my energy level should be. So my internal sense of where my energy should be positioned was pretty much has been off kilter most of my rehearsals. One of the most useful technical discoveries of the morning was during the chorus. In the second take, so I'm just going to quote the first word on the F4s for the chorus. It's my, sometimes, and till. That's no problem, but some kind of throws you down. And it wasn't the vowel that's been messing me up. The real problem is the M cutting off an airflow. And basically everything collapsed the phrase. So I tried something in a second take, and that was I modified that first syllable. Instead of saying S-O-M-E, I said S-A-H-N. So instead of some, it was some. And when you're doing that at pitch and at speed with background noises, it's sometimes. And it comes out much more cleanly. And because it was an it opened it up and I was able to get the note much more cleanly. And it stayed where it was supposed to stay. That was a really good moment today. Something mechanical, understandable, grabbable, manifested. It wasn't emotionally motivated. Hang on, that's going to be relevant in a moment. For the second time through, section 1 ended up getting substantially stronger than I expected it to. I realized after my playthrough that I'd forgotten whether or not I hit the high note on line 1 or not. And it turns out the reason I forgot was because I ignored it. It was fine. So that was no longer an obstacle. The sustain is getting closer to the new color match. Okay, so section 2 is the bass section, or the low section. That was getting stable in pitch and continuity, still missing that connection. And that's really been a difficult bridge because the theater person in me wants to emote on a certain level. The arrangement style and performance style of this arrangement runs counter to that. It's very subdued. It's very locked in and controlled. So I'm sort of fighting with my own senses on that one. And while I've commented and be prepared that it's no longer anybody else's scar, it's my scar, I am definitely not there on Boulevard. I have not taken ownership. Right now, I'm still just trying to get there. Chorus, I made the change. The chorus stayed together more consistently. The energy stopped overfiring as aggressively as it had been. And there was finally, in the chorus, some actual blends starting, which is completely new. Let's see. Section 4 is the new section that is often dealing with its energy being shifted incorrectly. I think it continued what is honestly becoming one of the biggest structural improvements in my past few sessions. It no longer feels like it's being kidnapped by Section 3. The emotion and the energy flow seems to still be doing that correction before it gets into Section 4. And there's a nice long space between the end of the end of the chorus and the beginning of the next verse. And this gets tricky because I had been talking about the idea that energy should flow through the entire thing, not as 4 separate sections. But at the same time, the energy between 3 and 4 were flowing so strongly that 3 was throwing 4 off. And what I think I managed to pull today, and I know how this is going to sound, I didn't disconnect the 2 sections, but I uncoupled them. The concept being that instead of running a garden hose directly from one to the other, I actually put valves on both ends of the 2 train cars. And as a result, sorry about that, as a result of that, the energy adjusted itself, leaving and then entering. Okay. Underneath all the technical observations this morning, there was, and I was commenting, this is coming up, there was a more complicated emotional layer that hit me between the 2 takes. Even though intellectually I know Boulevard is a much harder for me piece because of where it sits range-wise, because of certain musical demands it has, both as opposed to be prepared, different placement, different color, coordination, demands, the ranges are very different. There's a part of me that keeps feeling like progress should somehow be arriving faster and cleaner than it is. Oh, I also be prepared I've been doing for probably twice as long. So, intellectually, I know the comparison isn't fair. I have been talking about the concept about rebuilding coordination. And we're getting close to day 40 at this point. I've been saying that for 2 to 3 weeks. I'm not rebuilding coordination for my 20s. I'm building coordination that I've never really fully developed. I've never really had any strong singing work. So it's not a rebuild. It is an assemble from scratch. I don't have a frame of reference. However, it then becomes difficult not to compare yourself against singers who seem naturally tuned from the start. The ones who appear on AGT at 12. People who can seemingly just pick up a song and sing it effectively, or even work effortlessly. So one of the realizations this morning was recognizing that there really isn't much visible middle ground to compare against publicly, because most singers in the middle of I'm very trained and a professional performer and I'm a natural phenom, the ones in the middle, well, we don't perform publicly beyond maybe drunken karaoke. So most of what you see publicly tends to be either gifted or trained performers. And that can really distort your perception of what normal development actually looks like. Okay, honestly, somewhere underneath all of that was probably this larger fear sitting quietly underneath everything. And it's not whether or not I am improving or whether or not the improvement is possible. I mean, I am improving, but the fear that grasped me today after that first take didn't go as well, was whether reasonable improvement will eventually become enough to stand inside the kind of a cappella environment I am aspiring toward. I sing along to a lot of a cappella groups. And it is that realization that as much as I enjoy doing it right now, if I were there with them, it would not be the same. I would be completely outclassed. And so I see myself as far back as I am wondering, can I even get to that level? And that's scary. But in all honesty, it's also defeatist thinking. I need to always say, but I'm going to keep moving forward with whatever effort I can. So really a meaty morning because there was just so much going on. Now the afternoon session shifted over to Be Prepared. I figured out how to silence that thing. So today's secondary session honestly ended up becoming exactly what the design of how I work day to day intended. At the beginning of the week, I'm looking for something controlled and sustainable. And I'm also trying to find the enjoyment and the joy in the piece without escalating into some problem. Why aren't my bass notes there? Why can't I get my bass notes? And I'll tell you today for Be Prepared, I think it was like 3:30 in the afternoon locally, which is sort of the peak of my voice being up here. And I could tell there was no bass system. I was absolutely top to bottom baritone. And whereas I typically can hit an A1 when my voice is in the right shape, and sometimes even get down to a G1, I'm actually up on a D2, and that was as low as I could get. So, pretty quickly I just decided I'm not even going to think about the bass notes. If I just open my mouth and nothing comes out, fine. That's the purpose today. I'm not going to go looking for them. And I know, because earlier in the day, I was singing stuff much, much more deeply. But, by the time that came around, it was just like, be prepared. And that's obviously not what the end game is supposed to be. But keeping my mind focused on the concept of, I'm not going to bother. If they don't come, they don't come. And I'm just going to enjoy what I've got. That mindset helped the session more than anything else. So let's see, 163, 164. The first one, definitely a calibration pass. I just look over the past two. Now, when I say I look over the past 2 weeks, it's not to chase or demand or expect, but post-take, it's sort of a sense of where does that fall in the work I've been doing. And today it was good, but it was really low calibration for what I've been doing over the past few weeks. And there were little lyrical hiccups, a couple of missed notes, and there was one it was a domino effect where I thought I might have messed up one lyric, And as I reflected on that, I completely messed up the following lyric. So it was like one bounced to the other one. So I just, that take was just fraught with a couple of mistakes. But I say fraught with a couple of mistakes, but nothing was catastrophic. Nothing threw me out of this entirely. I was able to mentally stay with it, and even as things messed up, I just kept going. Somewhere around that point, I found myself thinking again about something I'm trying to practice more intentionally. And that is, once a take is done, it's done. I don't want the baggage from something I've previously done following me into the next one. I want to live inside whatever moment the current take is, instead of turning every new pass into an attempt to repair or chase. I mean, once I've done it, it's gone. It's in the past. And of course, time travel is impossible. Well, it's not exactly impossible, but the requirements to pull it off success. You know what? I'm going to go back to talking about music before somebody kidnaps me in a white van. Take 164. That settled down considerably after that, and it felt smoother. There were a couple of breathing errors. Not errors, even issues. You know, I was not staggering breath in the right place, but I still was able to make it through. I even came up with a couple of really different interpretations and theatrical ways of trying to play things. And I really was listening on the playback for, is this new mold of an idea adding, subtracting, integrating? I don't know. So the second performance, again, not a high quality performance, not a bad performance, but it's my new definition of secondary, which is do it, stay familiar with it, don't try to pick a new technique up, and just try to find that joy in of the act of singing and the piece. One thing became very obvious on playback, though, and I drifted away from the microphone again. So I could hear myself get softer and softer on the track. I could hear when I realized I drifted away from the mic and walked back to it. So at one point, I'm a little far from the microphone. The vocal sounds blended all the way in. But the larger realization from this whole session may actually have been recognizing that there seems to be some specific combination of songs that gradually warm down my voice. And it opens the entire system up. I will sing informally in the car, informally at home, informally from bed. And I will note that after 30 minutes, 45 minutes of random songs, I've opened up more and those bass notes produce better. I don't understand what the sequence is yet. I don't know if it's singing low until the low comes, singing high so it stretches, but I recognize the feeling and I know when it's happening. It's like suddenly the hidden switch got flipped and the instrument feels like it is tuned, available, and connected. So even on a day where the on a day where the bass notes basically never fully arrived, the session as a whole felt useful. It was stable and worth continuing the exploration. The other significant thing that happened today was actually, operational rather than musical. I have now with this color system of what I'm trying to accomplish on a certain type of day and a certain point in the week, was that I've made a calendar. And because I have had surgery at the beginning of May where they operated on my hand, I've been dealing with increases of pain. And I had a post-surgical appointment today. And I realized that previously when I set up the calendar, I had scheduled something during the time that I now had a doctor's appointment. And what I looked at was, can this calendar handle me making changes at the last moment without throwing the entire week into hell? And Boulevard was this morning. It was primary. Today is a green day, which is, again, not related to Boulevard, but it is. It had been completed. And the block in the middle, which was closest to the appointment, seemed like the safest one to pick up and try to move by itself. And my concern was that I was going to shove it in somewhere else. The week was going to be harder than I had planned, which is what this thing is supposed to prevent. But I looked at the way the calendar was laid out, and instead of dropping or postponing, I actually found a way to merge it into tomorrow, because the component that I'm rehearsing is the next section to be prepared, which I keep referring to as read between. And read between is not at the point where I'm singing, it's at the point where I'm researching. And I would have been doing research today and research tomorrow. So it made it easier just to integrate the two of them together so that I am going to direct the research, and the stuff I want to hit yesterday and today and tomorrow will balance out. So what made me happiest was that my system of structuring my work, it is working. And yeah, I admit, I'm coming at it from an engineer's point of view. It is a toy to fashion, so to speak. But the purpose of this thing is to make sure that I do enough work to develop and progress, but not so much that it begins to weigh down on me and cause fatigue. And I think the emotional reaction I had during the morning session was an indicator that I needed to examine the process. But the nice thing is, by integrating, it has prevented a catch-up feeling. Yeah, it's pretty much the kind of pressure that I'm trying to prevent. So I think it probably went to the right place and things balanced out. And speaking of the right place, I think it's probably going to be the right place that I can just close things up here tonight. Yeah. I will give my standard, which is, I feel, very important, and that is to thank you if you are following along through the stories and the recalibration and the rehearsal, the psychology, mistakes, experiments. It's wonderful. And, you know, if you've got a thing in your, if you've got an interest in DAW, I'm working there too. I'm trying to get a lot going on, but at the core of it is to improve so I am better positioned to go where I want to be. And those of you watching these episodes, you're supporting that belief of my journey, and sort of helping me reach people before I'm even performing. And that actually made me smile. So I'm going to stop there. Until day 40 tomorrow. Later.